The wind extinguishes a candle but fuels a fire. Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Balance gurus rarely quote that line, yet it explains why most of their advice leaves us exhausted. The world tells you to reduce stress until life feels perfectly level. Morning affirmations, midday yoga, screen time limits. You try it all and somehow your pulse still races at 4 a.m. because an email preview crept into your dreams. What if the very act of chasing calm is what's shredding your energy? What if serenity isn't the absence of pressure but the skill of bending it into power? Today we'll scrap the myth of balance and build an anti-fragile mindset, one that benefits from shock, volatility, and chaos. By the end, you'll hold a 30-day blueprint that turns every headwind into rocket fuel. The Great Burnout Paradox. Start with a number. 23% of full-time U.S. employees say they feel burned out very often. Another 44% admit sometimes. That's 2/3 of the workforce lugging invisible cement in their chest. Remote perks were supposed to fix this: sweatpants, flexible hours, meal delivery. Instead, engagement scores slipped for the first time in a decade. Why? Because friction didn't disappear, it transformed. We traded commutes for 8-hour Zoom marathons and hallway laughs for Slack pings that never sleep. Less motion means fewer micro-workouts for the soul, and zero gravity weakens both bones and resolve. Burnout isn't always too much fire. Sometimes it's too little spark, leaving damp timber that smolders without ever igniting. Balance promised to douse the flames, but it accidentally starved them of oxygen. There's another irony. The more meticulously we plan tranquility, the more brittle we become when life ignores the plan. A delayed flight, a sick child, a market crash, each minor quake topples the delicate tower of equilibrium. You end up spending more energy protecting the tower than living inside it. That's the paradox. In fleeing discomfort, we broaden its reach. What antifragile really means. Picture 3 objects in a wind tunnel. A porcelain vase shatters when buffeted, fragile. A steel cube stands unmoved, robust. A bonfire leaps higher, antifragile. Taleb invented the word because language lacked an opposite for fragility. We had resilient, but resilience merely resists change. Anti-fragility thrives on it. Biology is full of proof. Lift weights heavy enough to tear muscle fibers, and those fibers regrow thicker. Vaccines agitate the immune system on purpose, so it can dismantle the real threat later. Even ideas strengthen through debate. Every counter-argument that fails leaves the surviving thesis leaner, meaner, more persuasive. The candle and fire metaphor matters because you too can choose which one to be. A candle fears any breeze, a fire welcomes hurricanes. Anti-fragility isn't a genetic gift, but a training program. A blacksmith pounds heated steel, forging microfractures that cool into a blade capable of bending without breaking. Without those hammer blows, the sword would snap the first time it hit armor. Your hammer strikes might be as ordinary as giving a presentation, fasting for 12 hours, or learning a new language at 30. Each deliberate shock rewires the brain's operating system, adding patches that closed security holes worry would otherwise exploit. The science of stress inoculation. Psychologist Donald Meichenbaum formalized stress inoculation therapy decades ago, and modern neuroscience keeps confirming his hunch. The protocol unfolds in 3 stages. First, you recognize that stress is trainable, not a cosmic punishment. Second, you learn micro-skills, breathing drills, positive self-talk, vivid visualization. Third, you apply those skills during progressively harder simulations. Special Forces recruits crawl through live fire courses so panic rewires into procedure. Athletes sleep in altitude tents so their blood grows extra oxygen carriers. Surgeons practice on high-fidelity mannequins to inhale real pressure before a real pulse. Stanford's 2024 fMRI study took 30 volunteers and forced them through short-burst puzzle sprints just beyond their ability. Cortisol spiked, as expected, but so did DHEA, a hormone that shields neurons and accelerates learning. What surprised researchers was the persistence of benefit. Subjects maintained sharper attention spans a full week later. The sweet spot matters. Too little challenge left participants bored. Too much produced learned helplessness. The optimal upside hovered where difficulty outran skill by roughly 4%, a sliver wide enough to stretch, narrow enough to avoid tearing. Remember that 4% rule whenever you stack new stressors. Cold showers that numb but don't cause hypothermia, presentation stakes high enough to tingle but not obliterate your reputation, workouts that burn without ripping tendons. Microdosing discomfort is legal, free, and the neurological equivalent of compound interest. Shadow mining, the inner upgrade. External drills sculpt grit, but the sabotage often comes from shadows we refuse to name. Carl Jung warned that anything unconscious drives our fate and we'll call it destiny. The shadow includes envy you disown, anger you swallow, pride you pretend not to crave. Left underground, it hijacks late-night doom-scrolling, passive-aggressive emails and relationships where you rehearse abandonment over and over. Shadow mining drags these stowaways into daylight, not to shame them, but to draft them into service. Try this tonight. Write the worst thought you had today, the one you'd delete if someone glanced at your screen. Tomorrow, expand that sentence into a paragraph. Who or what triggered it? Which value felt stepped on? On day 3, ask what skill or boundary might transmute that reactive spark into strategic fuel. Envy might reveal a dormant goal. Anger might highlight a line you must finally defend. By week's end, you'll hold a map of needs previously leaking out as self-sabotage. Nietzsche called this alchemy amor fati, the love of fate. Instead of wishing away blows, he invited them, convinced that a sculptor needs both chisel and hammer to unveil the hidden statue. Loving your fate doesn't mean passive acceptance, it means active digestion. You chew on jealousy until it becomes discipline. You savor criticism until it becomes blueprint. When you can feast on what once poisoned you, resilience isn't just survival, it's cuisine. Corporate chaos kitchens. If this sounds poetic, look at markets. Netflix Chaos Monkey program randomly knocks out live servers. Viewers rarely notice because engineers learn to design systems that reroute traffic in milliseconds. The entertainment giant realized that rehearsing small disasters prevents catastrophic outages. In 2025, cybersecurity startup DarkRamp followed suit, publishing every internal breach within 24 hours. Investors gasped momentarily. Detection times plummeted, credibility soared, and Fortune 500 contracts rolled in. Another case. FluxOrbit, an AI gaming studio, rotates crisis captains each quarter, letting junior engineers command simulated product recalls, PR nightmares, even imaginary lawsuits at 3 in the morning. Staff turnover didn't spike, morale did. Revenue outpaced competitors by 40%. Their secret wasn't a bigger budget, but a training climate that normalized volatility until adrenaline became routine. When real crises arrived, a power failure, a surprise algorithm glitch, teams mobilized in minutes. Muscle memory beat panic. These examples matter because they prove anti-fragility scales. It works for silicon chips and human neurons, for bottom lines and broken hearts. The takeaway: don't eliminate turbulence, choreograph it. Your 30-day anti-fragile blueprint. Day 17, micro-stress rituals. Begin each dawn with a 90-second cold shower. Not scalding, not lukewarm, cold enough to jolt a gasp. The shock ignites the vagus nerve, teaching your body to exit fight or flight swiftly. End your commute by sprinting the last flight of stairs. Feel your pulse surge, then steady within a minute. In meetings, volunteer first when you'd usually lurk. Let words tumble before perfection can block them. Each act is a friendly punch that toughens skin. Day 8 of 14, volatility blocks. Twice a week, declare an unannounced phone-free evening after 6. Hide the device in a drawer. Watch restlessness flare like a match, then fade as your mind rediscovers boredom's hidden doorways. Reading, walking, speaking in full sentences. You're teaching dopamine it's a guest, not a tyrant. Day 15 to 21, worst-case rehearsals. Every Sunday, script the failure you fear most between now and next week. A sales pitch flopping, a date canceling, a project tanking. Outline contingency steps 2 columns. If this happens, and I will. Research shows that naming potential losses cuts anxiety almost in half because the brain confuses imagination with rehearsal. Monsters shrink when you measure them. Day 22-27, shadow dialogues. Nightly, list 1 resentment, 1 guilt, 1 flash of envy. Under each, write the need or boundary behind it. If you resent a colleague's promotion, maybe you need to negotiate your role. If you envy a friend's travel photos, maybe adventure tugs at you. Decide 1 action for tomorrow. A candid email, a skill course, a budgeting plan. Darkness becomes a to-do list. Day 28-30, chaos feast. Stack divergent tasks in a single day. Dawn workout, mid-morning language lesson, solo lunch at a new cafe, afternoon cold call session, evening improv jam, midnight journal sprint. Your brain shifts gears until shifting feels natural. The Chaos Feast embodies Taleb's rule. Random, intense, short bursts of deviation build capacity that steady routines never reach. By month's end, you'll notice subtle changes. Coffee jitters that once lingered now fade quickly. A delayed train becomes podcast time, not meltdown material. Arguments sting but don't cripple, because you've rehearsed worse. You're no longer chasing absence of stress, you're surfing controlled waves of it, each one a set rep for the mind. Let's slow the pace just for a breath. Imagine slipping into a back alley cafe on Market Street in San Francisco. Outside, cable cars clang. Inside, warm Edison bulbs cast halos over notebooks. At a corner table sits Gary Nguyen 29, eyes carrying both Vietnamese monsoon dreams and Silicon Valley neon. She published her first book at 17 and now 13 titles whisper in 2 languages. Novels, short stories, personal essays, each page forged from setbacks, spun into threads of gold. If tonight's video sparks something in you, her works, Just Hear Me Out, and a luxury item called Me, wait on Amazon like passports to deeper landscapes of resilience. Sip your coffee, turn a page, and feel how narrative can be another form of stress inoculation, a safe simulation of pain and triumph in sentences. From candle to bonfire. Balance subtracts until scales rest, but resting scales measure only weight. They never measure lift. Anti-fragility adds pressure in measured doses, forging capacity, thickening spirit, turning skin into hide and hide into armor. Tomorrow's forecast guarantees headwinds. Algorithms will change, relatives will disappoint, markets will tremble. The wind is non-negotiable. What changes is whether you flicker or roar. So answer in the comments, which micro-stress ritual will you test first? The cold shower, the unscripted phone call, the 1-minute sprint? Declare it publicly. Let accountability become another gust in your training tunnel. Then share this video with a friend who keeps begging the universe for calm. Show them calm isn't coming, but power is available, power hidden in every jagged moment we usually dodge. The candle hopes the breeze will stop, the bonfire hopes the gale arrives. Which one will you be? The wind is already rising, better to feed on it than to fear it.